Quantico, Virginia, Marine Corps Base. A Thursday in late September when the leaves were just starting to turn and the air carried that first whisper of autumn cold. The mess hall sat on the eastern edge of the compound, a low-slung brick building that had served hot meals to 3 generations of warriors. Inside, 52 Marines occupied long tables arranged in neat rows. The smell of coffee mixed with fried chicken and institutional green beans. Trays clattered. Voices rumbled. Outside the windows, the parade ground stretched empty under a pale sky. 11:30 in the morning. Peak lunch rush. The door opened. A woman stepped inside. 42 years old, though she carried those years with the kind of quiet strength that made exact age irrelevant. 5'9", athletic build beneath a plain navy blouse and gray slacks. No uniform, no rank insignia. Just a laminated badge clipped to her collar that read contractor in black letters. Her name was Nora Thorne. She moved through the entrance with economical steps, got a tray from the stack, moved down the serving line, took chicken, green beans, mashed potatoes, a glass of water. The mess hall staff barely looked at her. Just another civilian among the thousands who worked on base in capacities nobody quite understood or cared about. But 52 pairs of eyes tracked her anyway, because in a room full of warriors, an outsider always stands out. Nora reached the end of the line, turned toward the seating area, scanned the room for an empty spot. That's when she saw him, Master Gunnery Sergeant Garrett Brennan. He stood near the center of the mess hall, arms crossed over a chest that had been built through 2 decades of pushing his body past every limit the Corps could devise. 47 years old, 6'2", 220 pounds of muscle and scar tissue and stubborn pride. His uniform was crisp enough to cut glass. 3 rows of ribbons decorated his chest. Combat Action Ribbon, Navy Commendation Medal, Purple Heart with 2 stars, 18 years of service, 3 combat deployments, Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria. And right now he was blocking Nora's path to the only empty table. She stopped 3 feet from him, held her tray steady, made eye contact but didn't speak. The mess hall went quiet. 52 conversations died mid-sentence, forks paused halfway to mouths. The only sound was the hum of industrial refrigerators and the distant clatter of pots being washed in the kitchen. Brennan let the silence stretch. Let everyone see him standing there like a wall between the civilian woman and the place she wanted to sit. Then he spoke. His voice carried across the room with the effortless command of a man who'd spent 18 years making young Marines jump at the sound of it. This seat is for real Marines, not civilians playing dress-up. Nora didn't blink, didn't shift her weight, just stood there holding her tray with both hands like she had all the time in the world. "I'm just here to eat master guns." Her voice was calm, quiet, the kind of quiet that comes from deep reserves of discipline. Brennan took a step closer, close enough that she had to tilt her head back slightly to maintain eye contact. Close enough that she could smell the coffee on his breath and see the small scar above his left eyebrow where shrapnel had kissed him in Fallujah. "You heard me. This is not your place. Women like you don't belong in this building. You don't belong on this base." Nora's face showed nothing. No anger, no fear, no surprise. Just that same patient stillness. She opened her mouth to respond. Brennan's shoulder drove forward. The impact was brutal. 220 pounds of bone and muscle behind it. Nora never had time to brace. The shove caught her square in the chest and sent her stumbling backward. Her feet tangled. Her balance broke. She hit the floor hard. The tray flew from her hands. Mashed potatoes erupted across the concrete. The glass shattered. Water spread in a dark puddle. Chicken scattered. Her palms scraped against the rough surface as she tried to catch herself. For exactly 1 second, the mess hall held its breath. Then it erupted. Laughter exploded from 52 throats. Men slammed their tables. Someone let out a whoop. A bread roll flew through the air and hit Nora's shoulder. Then another piece of food. Then another. "Go home, civilian. This is what happens when you wander where you don't belong. Stick to your little therapy office." Brennan stood over her like a predator, surveying fallen prey. His chest swelled with satisfaction. Around him, his brothers in arms celebrated his dominance. This was his kingdom, his territory, and he had just defended it. Nora remained on the floor for exactly 3 seconds. Then she moved. Her palms pressed flat against the concrete, her core engaged with the precise control of someone who'd done this movement 10,000 times. She rose in one fluid motion. No scrambling, no wasted energy. Just a smooth transition from horizontal to vertical that would have made a gymnastics coach nod in approval. It was the kind of recovery that comes from specific training, The kind drilled into operators who need to get back up no matter what knocks them down. But nobody noticed. They were too busy laughing, too busy celebrating Brennan's victory, too busy watching the civilian woman brush food from her blouse with methodical precision. Except one person. Lieutenant Callum Wade sat 3 tables away, fork frozen halfway to his mouth. 28 years old, intelligence specialist. Sharp eyes that noticed things other people missed. And right now, those eyes were locked on the way Nora Thorne was breathing. 4 count in, 4 count hold, 4 count out. Combat breathing and tactical breathing. The kind they taught you in schools with no names when they were training you to stay calm while someone was shooting at you. Wade watched her fingers as she adjusted her contractor badge. The grip was precise, index and middle finger forming a specific angle. He'd seen that grip before. On the range, on operators who handled weapons for a living. Nora finished brushing herself off. She looked at Brennan. Her face showed nothing. No fear, no anger, no humiliation. Just patience, like someone waiting for a bus that was running late. "Are you done?" she asked. Her voice was quiet, level, almost conversational. Brennan blinked. This wasn't the reaction he expected. Civilians broke. They cried. They ran. They didn't stand there asking calm questions. "What did you say to me?" "I asked if you're done because I would still like to eat." The mess hall went quiet again. Even the Marines who'd been laughing moments ago sensed something shifting. The air felt different, charged. Brennan recovered quickly, forced to laugh, turned to his audience with arms spread wide. "Look at this. The therapist thinks she's tough." More laughter, but it sounded forced now, uncertain. Brennan stepped closer to Nora. Close enough that she had to smell the coffee on his breath again. Close enough to intimidate, to dominate. "Let me make this clear, sweetheart. You are nothing here. You have no rank, no authority, no right to breathe the same air as us. The only reason you're on this base is because some pencil pusher in Washington thinks we need our heads examined." He jabbed a finger toward the door. "So take your little clipboard and your little theories and get out of my mess hall before I make you." Nora held his gaze for a long moment. Then she did something unexpected. She smiled. Not a nervous smile, not a placating smile. It was the smile of someone who knew something nobody else in the room knew. A secret that changed everything. "Understood, Master Guns. I'll find somewhere else to eat." She turned and walked toward the exit. Her stride was unhurried. Her shoulders were straight. She didn't look back. Brennan watched her go, triumphant grins spreading across his face. He raised his arms in victory. "And that's how you handle civilianism." The mess hall erupted in cheers. Marines clapped him on the back. Someone handed him a fresh cup of coffee. The natural order had been restored. But Lieutenant Wade wasn't cheering. He was staring at the door Nora had just walked through. Specifically, he was staring at the way she'd walked. Heel to toe, weight centered, arms loose but ready. That wasn't how therapists walked. That was how soldiers walked. 3 days earlier, September 22nd, Tuesday morning, 0900 hours. Nora Thorne's rental car passed through the main gate at Marine Corps Base Quantico after a cursory inspection by the gate guard. Her credentials checked out: government contractor, strategic psychology consultant, Department of Defense contract number PSY I202494847. The guard waved her through without a second glance. She drove slowly through the base, following the signs to Building 2009. The administration complex. Trees lined the roads. Young Marines jogged in formation, their boots striking pavement in unified rhythm. The morning air was cool and carried the smell of cut grass. Nora parked in the visitor lot, gathered her briefcase, locked the car, walked to the entrance. Inside, fluorescent lights hummed over government-issue furniture. A receptionist behind bulletproof glass took her paperwork, made copies, returned the originals, printed out a temporary ID badge. "Dr. Thorne, you'll be in building 1133 for your consultations. Office 204, second floor. Do you need directions?" "No, thank you, I'll find it." The receptionist smiled the tired smile of someone who'd processed 1,000 contractors and would process 1,000 more. Nora clipped the badge to her collar, picked up her briefcase, left the building. She walked across the compound with the purposeful stride of someone who knew exactly where she was going. Past the barracks, past the armory, past the training facilities where the sound of gunfire echoed from the ranges. She found Building 1133 easily. Older construction, red brick, 3 stories. It housed administrative offices, counseling services, and a secure communications facility on the third floor that wasn't listed on any public directory. Second floor, Office 204. The room was exactly what she expected. Government issue desk, metal filing cabinet, 2 chairs for consultations. A window overlooking the parade ground where Marines were already drilling in the morning sun. Nora set her briefcase on the desk, opened it. Inside, beneath a layer of psychology textbooks and assessment forms, was a false bottom. She pressed 2 specific corners. The panel lifted. Underneath sat a Panasonic Toughbook CF33, military-grade laptop, encrypted hard drive, biometric scanner. The kind of equipment that cost $40,000 and required special authorization just to power on. Nora lifted it out, set it on the desk, pressed her thumb to the scanner. The screen came to life. Her fingers moved across the keyboard with practiced speed, not checking emails, not reviewing patient files. She was running a program that shouldn't exist on a civilian contractor's computer. Lines of code scrolled across the screen, encrypted data packets, communication logs from systems that were supposed to be air-gapped from any outside network. She worked for 7 minutes, then she closed the program, packed the laptop back into its hidden compartment, opened a standard psychological evaluation template on her personal tablet. At 09:15, she heard footsteps in the hallway. By the time the knock came at her door, Nora looked exactly like what she was supposed to be. A mild-mannered therapist ready to discuss stress management and coping mechanisms. "Come in." The door opened. Her first appointment was a young Marine, Private First Class Connor Blake, 20 years old, fresh face still carrying the last traces of teenage softness beneath the hardness that boot camp had tried to build. He sat across from her with nervous energy, bouncing his knee, picking at a loose thread on his uniform. "I don't really know why I'm here, ma'am. They just told me I had to come." Nora offered a gentle nod. Her voice was warm, professional, everything a good therapist should sound like. "That's fine, Connor. We can just talk. No pressure. Tell me how you're adjusting to life at Quantico." For the next 45 minutes, she listened. She asked thoughtful questions. She took notes. She was genuinely good at this. Not an act, not a cover. She had real training in psychology, real skill in reading people. But part of her mind was elsewhere. Part of her mind was calculating, analyzing, mapping the power structures of this base, identifying who talked to whom, who deferred to whom, who feared whom. Connor mentioned Master Gunnery Sergeant Brennan without prompting. "He's kind of a legend around here, ma'am. 18 years in, 3 combat deployments. Everyone respects him." Nora's pen paused on her notepad for just a fraction of a second. "Respects him," she repeated. "Or fears him." Connor hesitated, just for a moment, but Nora caught it. "Both, I guess." She filed that information away. Made a note that looked like standard therapy documentation, but contained details Connor didn't realize he was revealing. The session ended at 1000 hours. Connor left feeling heard, feeling like maybe this therapy thing wasn't so bad after all. Nora waited until his footsteps faded down the hallway. Then she pulled out the tough book again. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, accessing personnel files she wasn't supposed to have clearance for, using credentials that didn't appear in any official database. Master Gunnery Sergeant Garrett Brennan. The file was thick. Commendations, awards, letters of recommendation. A career that read like a textbook example of devoted service. But there were gaps. 7 to 8 years ago, a 14-month period where his assignment was listed simply as special detail, classified. No location, no unit designation, just a date range and a classification level. Nora clicked deeper. One notation caught her eye, a reference to something called Operation Dark Winter. The text was blacked out, redacted, but the date was visible. 7 years ago, her hand resting on the desk curled into a fist. The muscles in her jaw tightened. For just a moment, the mask of the mild-mannered therapist slipped. Underneath was something harder, colder, filled with purpose that had been burning for 7 years. Then she released the tension, breathed, returned to the neutral expression she wore so well. She closed Brennan's file, opened another one. Financial records. Brennan's personal banking history. This required even deeper access, the kind of access that would trigger alarms if anyone was watching. But Nora had made sure nobody was watching. One entry stood out, 7 years ago, 3 days after Operation Dark Winter. Deposit $47,000. Source listed as inheritance. But Nora had already checked. Brennan's parents were both alive 7 years ago. No aunts or uncles had died. No grandparents had left him money. The deposit was a lie. Someone had paid Garrett Brennan $47,000 3 days after 12 American operators died in the Syrian desert. Nora stared at the screen for a long moment. Her breathing stayed controlled. 4 count in, 4 count hold. 4 count out. Then she opened a third file. This one was her own. Classified, Red Omega level, the highest security clearance in the United States military and intelligence apparatus. So high that 99% of generals didn't even know it existed. The file showed her real identity. Commander Nora James Thorne, senior grade 12, Joint Special Reconnaissance Group, 20 years of service, enlisted at 22. Proved herself in ways that got her noticed by people who operated in shadows. Trained in skills that had no official schools. Deployed on missions that had no official records. And 7 years ago, she'd been part of a 12-person team sent to Syria on an operation called Dark Winter. She was supposed to be killed with the others. The fact that she survived had been called a miracle by the after-action report. But Nora knew better. It wasn't a miracle. It was failure. She'd failed to save her team, failed to identify the threat in time, failed to stop the betrayal that put them all in a kill box. And for 7 years, she'd been hunting the person responsible. The trail had led her here, to Quantico, to Master Gunnery Sergeant Garrett Brennan. He wasn't the mastermind. She knew that. He was a pawn, a messenger, a useful tool. But pawns knew things. Pawns heard whispers. Pawns could be turned into witnesses. Nora closed the laptop, returned it to its hidden compartment, locked her briefcase. Her next appointment would arrive in 15 minutes. She had work to do. That evening, after her last session ended at 1700 hours, Nora returned to her temporary quarters. A small room in the bachelor officer quarters reserved for visiting contractors. Single bed, desk, bathroom, window overlooking the parking lot. She locked the door, drew the blinds, set her briefcase on the desk, opened it, removed the laptop, powered it on. The screen glowed in the dimming light. She accessed the Joint Worldwide Intelligence Communication System, JWICS, the secure network that connected every intelligence agency and military command center in the country. She ran searches, deep searches, following threads that most people wouldn't even know to look for. Brennan's service record, his deployments, his assignments. The gaps in his file weren't random. They were deliberate. Someone had scrubbed specific information, but they'd done it sloppily, left traces, breadcrumbs that someone with Nora's access and training could follow. 7 years ago, Brennan had been assigned to a communications detail, supporting special operations in Syria. His job was to relay encrypted messages between field teams and command. Every message that went in or out of Operation Dark Winter had passed through his equipment. Nora pulled up the communication logs from that period. It took her 20 minutes to decrypt them, another 10 to find what she was looking for. 3 transmissions, sent from Brennan's station. Not to official channels, to an unlisted node, a ghost address that shouldn't exist. The transmissions had been sent in the 48 hours before Dark Winter commenced. Someone had used Brennan's equipment to send their exact coordinates, their approach routes, their timing, to the enemy. Nora leaned back in her chair, stared at the screen. The evidence was circumstantial, not enough for a court-martial, but enough to know she was on the right track. Brennan had been the conduit. The question was, who gave him the orders? She opened another file. This one she'd been carrying for 20 years. Her father's file. Colonel James Thorne, died 20 years ago. Single vehicle accident on Route 234. Icy conditions, lost control, crashed into a ravine, ruled accidental. But Nora had never believed it. Her father had been investigating an intelligence leak, getting close to exposing someone high up, someone powerful. His last entry in his personal log, written the night before he died, meeting with trusted colleague AH tomorrow to discuss evidence. Breakthrough imminent. The next day he was dead. For 20 years, Nora had wondered who AH was. For 7 years, she'd been hunting the same network that killed her father. And now the trails were converging. She closed the laptop, sat in darkness. Tomorrow she would continue the mission, continue playing the role of the mild-mannered therapist, continue gathering evidence. But tonight she allowed herself one moment of vulnerability. She opened the locked case she'd brought with her. Inside was a photograph. 12 people in combat gear, smiling, arms around each other's shoulders. Taken the day before Operation Dark Winter. Sergeant Wyatt Briggs, 42, mentor, father figure. The man who'd taught her everything about being an operator. Corporal Brenna Sullivan, 29, best friend, sniper. The woman who'd saved her life in Fallujah and Baghdad, 10 others, brothers and sisters, warriors who trusted her to lead them home, all dead because someone sold them for money. Nora traced her finger across Wyatt's face. Brenna's face. I'm close, she whispered to the photograph. I'm so close, just a little longer. I promise, Wawak. She closed the case, locked it, set it aside. Tomorrow the hunt would continue. But tonight she let herself remember. The next morning, Lieutenant Callum Wade sat at his desk in the intelligence section of Building 2009. His computer screen showed personnel files, routine background checks on new arrivals to the base. He'd been doing this for 3 years. It was boring work, but necessary, making sure everyone who came through the gates was who they claimed to be. Usually it was straightforward. Upload the contractor's information, run it through the verification system, get a green light, move on to the next one. But something about Dr. Nora Thorne bothered him. He couldn't put his finger on it. Just a feeling, the way she'd ask questions during his evaluation. Too specific, too focused on operational details that a therapist shouldn't care about. So he decided to run a deeper check. He uploaded her information to the verification system. Contractor credentials, education history, previous employment, references. Hit enter. The system processed for longer than usual. 30 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes. Then the screen changed. Red text appeared. Access denied, security violation logged, red omega classified, do not attempt again. Wade stared at the screen, his hand frozen on the mouse. Red omega. He'd been in military intelligence for 6 years, had clearance for things most people didn't know existed. But he'd never heard of red omega. He tried to close the window. It wouldn't close. The red text just sat there, staring at him. Then a new line appeared. Your credentials have been flagged for unauthorized access attempt. Report to security immediately. Wade's blood went cold. He grabbed his phone, had called the security office, explained what happened. The officer on the other end was confused. Lieutenant, I'm not showing any flag on your account. Are you sure you saw that message? Wade looked at his screen. The red text was gone. His normal desktop had returned, like nothing had ever happened. Yes, I'm sure. It said red omega, security violation. Silence on the other end of the line. Sir, I'm going to be honest with you. I've never heard of that classification, and our system doesn't show any alert. Maybe you misread something. Wade hung up, stared at his computer. He hadn't misread anything. That message had been real, which meant someone very powerful had just noticed him asking questions about Dr. Nora Thorne, and they'd sent him a warning. He looked out his window, across the compound, toward Building 1133, where Nora Thorne was conducting evaluations like nothing was wrong. Who the hell was she? That afternoon, Nora finished her session with a nervous corporal who was struggling with nightmares from his deployment. She gave him genuine advice, breathing exercises, cognitive behavioral techniques, resources he could access. The corporal left feeling better. Nora made notes in his file, real notes, because the cover had to be perfect. Then she heard footsteps in the hallway. Confident stride, military bearing. The knock came before she could close her laptop. Come in. Lieutenant Callum Wade entered. He was in uniform, regulation haircut, 28 years old but carrying himself with the kind of careful precision that suggested he thought before he acted. Dr. Thorne, do you have a moment? She gestured to the chair across from her desk. Of course, Lieutenant. Please sit. He sat, but he didn't relax, didn't settle into the chair the way her other patients did. He perched on the edge, alert. I need to ask you something, ma'am, and I need you to be honest with me. Nora waited. Her face showed nothing but professional interest. During my evaluation yesterday, you asked very specific questions about communication protocols during field operations, about authentication codes, about relay procedures. I asked questions relevant to understanding operational stress, Lieutenant. That's what I thought, but then I ran a routine background verification on you. Standard procedure for all contractors. Nora's expression didn't change, but internally she was calculating, preparing. And Wade leaned forward, and I got a response I've never seen before in 6 years of doing this job. Red Omega classification, access denied, security violation logged. He paused, watching her face for any reaction. Ma'am, I've never even heard of Red Omega, and when I tried to call security about it, they said there was no flag on my account. The warning just disappeared. Nora regarded him for a long moment. This young officer with his sharp eyes and inconvenient questions. She could shut him down, could report him for unauthorized access, could have him transferred off this base within 24 hours, or she could make a different choice. Lieutenant Wade, let me ask you a question. Why did you run that check? He blinked, surprised by the question. Because something felt off, the way you asked questions, the way you moved, the way you watched the room during the evaluation. That's not how therapists behave. How do they behave? They focus on the patient. You were analyzing everything, the exits, the windows, the door, like you were doing threat assessment. Nora allowed herself a small smile. You're observant. Part of my job, ma'am. She stood, walked to the window, looked out at the parade ground where young Marines were drilling in the afternoon sun. Lieutenant, there are questions that can damage your career. Questions that once asked cannot be unasked. Do you understand? Yes, ma'am. And you're still asking? Yes, ma'am. She turned to face him. Why? Wade met her eyes, didn't flinch. Because if something wrong is happening on this base, I want to help stop it. And if something right is happening that I don't understand, I want to help with that too. Nora studied him, reading the micro-expressions, the body language, the sincerity or lack thereof. She made a decision. Building 52, 2200 hours tonight. Come alone. Tell no one, friend. Wade nodded once. Understood, ma'am. And Lieutenant, if you change your mind between now and then, there's no shame in that. Some doors once open and change everything. I understand. He stood, walked to the door, paused with his hand on the handle. Ma'am, that message I got, the red Omega warning, that was real, wasn't it? Yes, and you made it disappear. I made sure the right people knew you were just doing your job, nothing more. Wade absorbed that. Thank you, ma'am. Don't thank me yet, Lieutenant. You don't know what you're getting into. He left. Nora returned to the window, watched him cross the compound below, heading back to his office. She'd just made a calculated risk. Either Lieutenant Callum Wade would become an asset, or he would become a problem that needed to be contained. She'd find out tonight which one he was. 2200 hours. Building 52 sat at the edge of the base, an old training facility that had been decommissioned 3 years ago when the new Combat Simulation Center opened. The windows were dark, the parking lot empty. Lieutenant Callum Wade arrived 10 minutes early, parked his vehicle 3 buildings away, walked the rest of the distance on foot. The night air was cool and carried the distant sound of gunfire from the ranges where night qualification courses were running. He tried the door, unlocked. Inside the building smelled of dust and old paint. Emergency lights provided just enough illumination to navigate the hallway. Wade moved toward the back where the old range control tower used to be. Nora was already there. She stood by the window silhouette against the faint glow of base security lights. She'd changed out of her civilian contractor clothes. Now she wore dark tactical pants and a fitted black shirt. Her hair was pulled back. No makeup, no pretense. This wasn't Dr. Nora Thorne's civilian therapist. This was someone else entirely. Wade stopped in the doorway. His hand instinctively moved toward where his sidearm would be if he were carrying. Nora didn't turn around. Close the door, Lieutenant. He did. The latch clicked with finality. She turned to face him. Her eyes were different in the dim light. Harder, like looking into deep water where things moved in the darkness. Last chance to walk away. Once we have this conversation, your life changes. Your career trajectory changes. Everything you thought you knew about your service changes. Wade took 3 steps into the room, stood at attention. I'm not walking away, ma'am. Nora studied him for 15 seconds. Then she pulled out a tablet, tapped the screen, turned it to face him. The image showed 12 people in combat gear, desert background, faces streaked with dust and camouflage paint, arms around each other's shoulders, smiling despite the heat and the weight of their equipment. Operation Dark Winter, Nora said quietly. 7 years ago, Syria, 12 special operators sent to gather intelligence on a high-value target. Wade looked at the faces, young, strong, alive. I've never heard of that operation. You wouldn't have. It's classified at a level most generals don't have access to. She swiped to the next image. Same location, same desert, but now there were bodies under tarps. Military personnel standing around looking shell-shocked, smoke rising from a destroyed compound. 12 hours after insertion, the team was ambushed. The enemy knew exactly where they'd be, exactly when they'd arrive, exactly how they'd approach. Nora's voice remained steady, professional, but Wade heard something underneath, something that had been buried for 7 years but never died. 12 people died in 13 minutes, RPGs, machine gun fire, Coordinated assault from 3 directions simultaneously. She swiped again. The next photo showed a woman, younger than the Nora standing before him now, covered in blood, being loaded onto a medevac helicopter. Eyes open but distant, shock and grief written across her face. One survivor, Nora said. Me. Wade looked from the tablet to the woman standing in front of him, the pieces falling into place. You were part of that team. I led that team. She set the tablet down, walked to the window, stared out at the dark base. 3 broken ribs, gunshot wound to the shoulder, pinned under rubble for 2 hours. I watched my team die and couldn't do anything to stop it. Jesus. The official report called it bad intelligence, wrong location for the enemy forces, unlucky timing. She turned back to face him. But I knew better. Someone sold us. Someone gave the enemy our coordinates, our approach, routes, our timing. Someone murdered 12 American operators for money. Wade's mind was racing, processing, calculating what this meant. And you've been hunting whoever did it for 7 years. The trail led here, to Quantico. Nora nodded, picked up the tablet again, pulled up a different file, showed him. Master Gunnery Sergeant Garrett Brennan, service record, commendations, awards. Master Guns Brennan was the communications specialist for Dark Winter. Every message in and out went through his equipment. She pulled up communication logs, highlighted 3 entries. 3 transmissions to an unlisted node, sent in the 48 hours before we went in. Ghost address that shouldn't exist. Wade leaned closer, read the technical details. Someone used his station to leak your coordinates. Yes. You think Brennan did it? I think Brennan was the tool. Someone higher gave the orders. Someone with the authority and the access to manipulate communication protocols without raising flags. She showed him another document, financial records, $47,000 deposit into Brennan's account, 3 days after Dark Winter. Listed as inheritance, but both his parents were alive. No family members died. Payment. Exactly. Wade absorbed all of this, the weight of it, the implications. So you came here undercover, playing the therapist, getting close to Brennan to figure out who gave him orders. That's the mission. And the Red Omega classification. Nora pulled something from her pocket. A black ID card. She held it up in the dim light. Commander Nora James Thorne, SG-12, Joint Special Reconnaissance Group, Red Omega clearance. Wade's eyes widened. You're not a contractor. I am when I need to be. I'm also a commander when I need to be. An intelligence analyst, a field operative, whatever the mission requires. She put the ID away. Red Omega is the highest security clearance in the United States, higher than the president in some contexts. It's given to a very small number of people who operate in spaces where normal chains of command don't apply. How many people have that clearance? Fewer than 20 in the entire country. Wade let out a slow breath. He'd been doing routine background checks on someone who operated at a level he didn't even know existed. The warning I got, that was you protecting me. That was me making sure the right people knew you were just doing your job. Nothing more. If I hadn't intervened, you'd have had a very uncomfortable conversation with people who don't like questions. Thank you. Nora waved it off, moved to a different topic. I'm telling you this because I need help. Brennan is insulated, protected. He's been here 18 years, has loyalty networks I can't penetrate as a civilian contractor. She looked at Wade directly. But you can. Your intelligence. You have access to systems and people I don't. And more importantly, you're invisible. Nobody's watching you the way they're watching me. Wade straightened. This was the moment, the decision point. What do you need? There's someone on this base, someone high-ranking, someone who's taken an unusual interest in my presence here. I need you to watch him, track his movements, monitor his communications if you can do it without raising flags. Who? General Aldrich Hale. Wade knew the name. Everyone on base knew General Hale, Deputy Director of Intelligence, 56 years old, decorated career, 3 decades of service. You think a general is involved? I think whoever gave Brennan his orders had stars on their collar. And Hale has been asking too many questions about me, showing up places he doesn't need to be. Watching. She pulled up a photo on her tablet. General Hale in dress uniform, sharp eyes, distinguished bearing. Be careful, if he is involved, he's dangerous. He's survived this long by being smart and ruthless. Wade nodded, committed the face to memory. When do I start? Tomorrow, but Lieutenant, Nora's voice dropped lower, more serious. Once you start, you can't stop. If you back out halfway, if you get scared, if you decide this is too much, you become a liability. Do you understand what that means? Wade met her eyes, understood perfectly. I understand, ma'am. Good. Now get out of here. Different route than you came. And Wade, yes, ma'am. Welcome to the war. Nobody knows we're fighting. Day 2 began with autumn rain. Gray skies. Water drumming on the roof of Building 133. Nora arrived at her office at 0730. Earlier than necessary, but she had work to do. The isolation had already begun. She noticed it immediately. The receptionist on the first floor who'd been friendly yesterday now barely made eye contact. The 2 captains who'd nodded politely in the hallway now crossed to the other side to avoid passing too close. Word had spread. Master Gunnery Sergeant Brennan had made his opinion clear. This civilian woman didn't belong. And in the tribal dynamics of a military base, Brennan's opinion carried weight. Nora went about her day as if nothing had changed, conducted her scheduled evaluations, took notes, offered genuine therapeutic advice. But she watched, observed, documented. At 1100 hours, she went to the mess hall for an early lunch. The room was less crowded than the day before. Maybe 30 Marines scattered across the tables. She got her tray, took chicken and rice, a glass of water, turned toward the seating area. Every conversation stopped. 30 sets of eyes tracked her movement. She walked toward an empty table near the window. Good light, good sight lines, tactical position. Before she could sit, 3 Marines stood up from a nearby table, moved to block her path. Sorry, ma'am. The speaker was a corporal, early 20s, apologetic expression that didn't reach his eyes. This table's reserved. I don't see any reserve sign. It's reserved. Nora looked at the next closest table. 2 more Marines stood, same apologetic expression, same message. This one too, ma'am. She scanned the room. At every table where there was space, someone was standing, blocking access, making it clear. You're not welcome here. Nora could have pulled rank, could have revealed who she really was, could have made these young Marines very sorry for this petty display. Instead, she walked to the wall beneath the window, set her tray on the narrow ledge, stood there and ate her lunch. She didn't rush, didn't hide, didn't show any emotion at all, just stood there calmly eating chicken and rice while 30 Marines watched. From across the room, Master Gunnery Sergeant Brennan leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, satisfied smile on his face. He didn't need to participate directly, didn't need to say a word. His soldiers handled it for him. Lieutenant Wade sat 3 tables away. He hadn't joined the blockade, but he hadn't defended Nora either. Just sat there, fork in hand, watching, taking notes. Day 3 brought escalation. Nora arrived at her office to find her computer terminal wouldn't log in. Her credentials had been disabled overnight. She called IT support. Ma'am, I'm showing your account was flagged for a security review. Standard procedure. Should be resolved in 24 to 48 hours. I have patient files I need to access. I understand, ma'am, but until the review is complete, there's nothing I can do. She hung up, pulled out her personal tablet. Used that instead. The security review was bullshit. Someone had put in a request to lock her out of base systems, make her job harder, force her to waste time dealing with administrative obstacles. It was professional sabotage disguised as procedure. At 1400 hours, she had an appointment with a young sergeant dealing with PTSD. The sergeant never showed up. Nora waited 30 minutes, called to confirm. Oh, Sergeant Morrison. Yeah, his appointment got rescheduled, ma'am. Didn't anyone tell you? No. Sorry about that, administrative error. We'll get you updated paperwork. The paperwork never came. 2 more appointments that day were mysteriously canceled or rescheduled without notice. Every time with an apologetic explanation. Every time another obstacle. Nora documented everything. Times, names, exact words used. The pattern was clear. Someone was systematically cutting off her access, her resources, her ability to do the job she was supposedly here to do. Day 4 started with a knock on her door at 0530 in the morning. 2 military police officers stood in the hallway, young, professional, faces carefully neutral. Dr. Thorne, we need you to come with us. May I ask why? There's been a report, ma'am. We need to check your quarters. A report of what? A contraband. Nora's face showed nothing, but internally she was calculating. This was it, the frame she'd been expecting. Of course, let me get my shoes. They waited while she put on shoes, then escorted her down the hallway. Other residents of the bachelor officer quarters peered out their doors, curious, concerned. Her room had already been searched. The mattress was overturned, her clothes scattered across the floor, drawers pulled out, belongings spread across the desk. And sitting in plain view on the nightstand, impossible to miss, was a small plastic Ziploc bag. Inside were 3 white pills. One of the MPs picked it up with gloved hands, examined it. Oxycodone, ma'am. Controlled substance. Care to explain? Nora looked at the bag, at the pills, at the 2 young MPs who were just doing their jobs. Those aren't mine. They were found in your quarters. I understand they're still not mine. The MPs exchanged glances. They'd expected denial. Everyone denied it. But they'd also expected panic, nervousness, fear. What they got was absolute calm. Ma'am, you're going to need to come with us for questioning. Of course. The interrogation room was exactly what she expected. Concrete walls, metal table, 2 chairs bolted to the floor, mirror on one wall that was definitely two-way glass. They left her alone for 40 minutes. Classic technique. Let the suspects sit. Let them sweat. Let their imagination run wild about what's coming. Nora sat perfectly still, breathing steady, eyes forward. She'd been trained to resist interrogation by people who made these 2 MPs look like amateur hour. When they finally came back, they had questions. Lots of questions. Where did you get the pills? I didn't get them. They're not mine. Why were they in your quarters? Someone planted them. Who would do that? I don't know. Do you have any proof they were planted? The fact that they're not mine is proof enough. Around and around, same questions phrased different ways, designed to catch inconsistencies, to wear her down, to get her to slip up. Nora's answers never changed, never varied. Same calm tone, same unshakable certainty. After 2 hours, a new officer entered. Major Ethan Cross, 40 years old, intelligence insignia on his collar, sharp eyes that took in everything and gave away nothing. He sat across from Nora, studied her for a long moment. Dr. Thorne, your background check is interesting. How so, Major? Most civilian contractors have straightforward files, education, employment history, references. He leaned forward. Yours has gaps. My previous work involves sensitive projects, confidentiality agreements. That's what the file says, but when I tried to verify those projects, I hit walls. Nora waited, let him talk. Not just classified material. Walls that shouldn't exist for a psychology consultant. I can't speak to how your verification systems work, Major. No, I suppose you can't. He pulled out a folder, set it on the table, opened it. Inside were her contractor credentials, her educational records, her published papers on combat psychology, all perfect, all verifiable. But Major Cross wasn't buying it. I've been in intelligence for 12 years, Dr. Thorne. I know how to read people, and I can't read you. That bothers me. Perhaps you're overthinking it, Major. Sometimes a therapist is just a therapist. Perhaps. He closed the folder, stood. The contraband charges are being dropped. Insufficient evidence. Someone was sloppy about covering their tracks. Nora nodded once. I appreciate your thoroughness. Don't thank me yet. I still have questions about you. Questions I intend to answer. He walked to the door, paused with his hand on the handle. You know what the interesting thing is, the pills we found in your room? The packaging, the lot number. They match a batch that was reported stolen from the base pharmacy 6 months ago, before you ever arrived here. He looked back at her. Which means someone has been holding on to those pills, waiting for the right moment, the right target. That is interesting, isn't it? He opened the door. You're free to go, Dr. Thorne, but I'd be very careful if I were you. Someone on this base wants you gone, and next time they might be less sloppy. That evening, Nora sat in her quarters reviewing the day's events. The search, the interrogation, Major Cross's pointed questions. She was running out of time. The frame had failed, but there would be others, more sophisticated, harder to disprove. She needed to move faster. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. She checked the peephole, saw a uniform, general stars on the shoulder. Every muscle in her body tensed. Nora opened the door. General Aldrich Hale stood in the hallway, 56 years old, distinguished, silver hair perfectly trimmed, dress uniform immaculate, cold eyes that had seen 3 decades of service and missed very little. Dr. Thorne, may I have a moment? Every instinct told Nora to shut this down, to refuse, to maintain distance, but she needed to know what he wanted. Of course, General, please come in. Hale entered, glanced around the small room, noted the overturned mattress that Nora hadn't bothered to fix, the clothes still scattered. I heard about this morning's unpleasantness. My apologies. not how we treat contractors on this base. It's fine, sir, just a misunderstanding. Hale turned to face her. His expression was difficult to read, concern mixed with something harder underneath. Dr. Thorne, I'm going to be direct with you. I know who you really are. Nora's hand moved almost imperceptibly, calculating distance to the closest improvised weapon, but she kept her face neutral. I'm not sure what you mean, so. Commander Nora Thorne, SG-12, Joint Special Reconnaissance Group. Silence stretched between them, Nora calculating, preparing for multiple scenarios. Hale raised his hand slowly, showing he wasn't a threat, but his left eye twitched microscopically when he made the gesture. I'm not your enemy, Commander. Quite the opposite. Explain quickly. I've been tracking Ghostline for years, the intelligence leak that's been compromising operations, selling American lives for profit. He paused, his hand trembled slightly as he pulled out a folder. I was Deputy Director of Intelligence 7 years ago, when Operation Dark Winter went sideways. I knew something was wrong, tried to stop it, got overruled. Nora watched him carefully, looking for tells, for deception, the trembling hand. The eye twitch when he mentioned being overruled. He knew too many operational details for someone claiming to be on the outside, but those could be signs of genuine emotion. Guilt over not stopping the massacre. Anger at being helpless. Or they could be signs of a very good liar. Why are you telling me this? Because Master Gunnery Sergeant Brennan was the communications relay for Dark Winter. But he's not the mastermind. Someone higher gave him orders. Someone with the authority to manipulate secure channels. And you want to help me find who? I want to help you stop them. Because they're not finished. Hale set the folder on the desk. Phase 2, another operation. Fort Bragg, scheduled for 3 weeks from now. Same pattern. Coordinates will be leaked. Operators will die. Nora opened the folder, scanned the contents. Intelligence assessments, threat reports, operational timelines. It looked legitimate, but the best bait always did. Why come to me? Why not handle this through official channels? Because I don't know who else is compromised. Ghostline has survived this long by having assets everywhere. I only trust a handful of people. He moved toward the door. And you're one of them. Nora closed the folder, looked at Hale directly. General, with respect, I don't know if I can trust you. I understand. 7 years of hunting makes everyone look like the enemy. He paused at the door. His voice softened with what sounded like genuine sadness. Your father was a good man, by the way. Colonel James Thorne. I served with him 20 years ago. Nora's blood went cold. Her hand on the folder tightened. You knew my father. He was a friend. We came up through the ranks together. Intelligence school, first deployments. Hale's eyes grew distant. He was investigating the same leak that got him killed. I tried to warn him. Tried to tell him he was getting too close to dangerous people. He wouldn't listen. Hale looked directly at Nora now. I'm sorry I couldn't protect him. Maybe I can help protect you. He left, door closing softly behind him. Nora stood alone in her quarters, heart pounding, mind racing. General Hale knew her father, knew about his investigation, knew how he died. That could mean Hale was genuinely trying to help. A guilt-ridden officer who'd failed to save a friend and wanted to make amends with the daughter. Or it could mean Hale was the one who killed him. She pulled out her encrypted phone, sent a message to Lieutenant Wade. Priority 1, General Hale, watch him, everything. The reply came 30 seconds later. Already on it. At 0200 hours, Lieutenant Wade sat in his vehicle in a parking lot with clear sight lines to Building 2009, the administration complex. The building that housed the SCIF, where classified communications happened. He'd been here for 3 hours. Watching, waiting, thermos of coffee going cold in the cup holder. At 0243, a vehicle pulled into the lot. General Hale got out, looked around the empty parking lot like a man checking for surveillance. Wade raised his phone, started recording. Hale walked to the entrance, used his access card. The light blinked green. He entered. Wade switched to his tablet. He'd hacked into the base security system earlier that day. Not deep, just enough to see access logs in real time. Enough to confirm his suspicions. The system showed no record of Hale's entry. Someone had scrubbed it. Live, as it happened, which meant Hale had help. Someone in security. Someone with root access to the base infrastructure. Wade kept recording, took timestamps, documented everything. 47 minutes later, Hale emerged, looked around again, got back in his vehicle. Wade gave him a 30-second head start, then followed. Lights off. Staying 3 cars back when there was traffic. Dropping back to 500 meters when there wasn't. Hale didn't go to his quarters. Didn't go home to his family. He went to the west parking garage. The one that was mostly emptied at night. The one with broken security cameras that had been scheduled for repair for 6 months. Pulled into a spot in the back corner. The darkest spot, the blindest spot. Sat there for 3 minutes, then got out. Started pacing. Pulled out a phone. Not his official phone. A second phone. Encrypted. The kind you bought with Qualcomm and destroyed after a few uses made a call. Wade was too far away to hear, but he had a directional microphone in his equipment bag. Military surplus, the kind intelligence officers use for field surveillance. He set it up quickly, aimed it at Hale, put on headphones, started recording. The audio was broken, fragmentary. Wind noise and distance degraded the quality, but he caught pieces. SG-12 is here. Yes, Commander Thorne arrived 8 days ago. Wade's pulse quickened. He adjusted the microphone, trying to get cleaner audio. Timeline needs to accelerate. Phase 2 can't wait 3 weeks. She's too good. More pacing, Hale's voice rising slightly, stress evident even through the static. I made contact this evening. Planted the seed about her father. Yes, she took the bait. Wade's hands tightened on the equipment. Brennan is the weak link. We need to decide if he's worth protecting or if he becomes a liability. Loose ends, you understand. Hale stopped pacing. Listened to whoever was on the other end. I don't care what it costs. She cannot reach Fort Bragg. If she gets to phase 2 before we execute, the entire network is compromised. The call ended. Hale stood there for another minute, staring at the phone. Then he pulled out the SIM card, bent it, dropped it in a storm drain, pocketed the phone body, got back in his vehicle, drove away. Wade sat in the darkness, hands shaking, heart pounding. He had it, all of it. He transferred the recording to 3 separate encrypted storage locations, then sent the file to Nora's secure phone, along with a message. You were right. He's not helping. He's hunting you. Audio attached. He mentioned your father as bait. He waited, watching the screen. 3 minutes later, his phone buzzed. Just 2 words from Nora. Good work. Nora listened to the recording 4 times. Each time, her breathing got harder. Her hands clenched tighter around the phone. The mask she'd worn for 8 days cracking. General Aldrich Hale, the man who'd looked her in the eyes and talked about her father with what sounded like genuine sadness, was talking about her like prey, like a problem to be eliminated. She pulled up Hale's service record on her laptop, used her Red Omega access to go deeper than any normal search would allow, into files that even most generals couldn't see, into the spaces where secrets lived, financial records, personal banking, and investment accounts, standard salary for 30 years of service, normal expenses, mortgage paid off, kids through college. Everything looked clean at first glance, but Nora knew where to look. She found a trust fund set up for Hale's son, established 15 years ago, normal enough for a father planning for his child's future. Then she traced the deposits. They didn't come from Hale's salary. They came from a shell company, LLC registered in Delaware. No physical address, no employees, just a legal entity. She went deeper, found that the shell company was owned by another shell company, and that one by another. 6 layers deep, each one carefully constructed to hide the trail. But Nora had spent 7 years learning how to follow money through the dark places where it hid. At the 6th layer, she found the source. Offshore account. Cayman Islands, beyond the reach of normal law enforcement, beyond the reach of normal investigators. $73 million. The number hit her like a physical blow. She scrolled through the transaction history, deposits correlating with dates she recognized, operations she'd studied, missions that had gone wrong in ways that seemed like bad luck at the time, but weren't luck at all. 14 different operations over 12 years. 14 times American soldiers had walked into situations where the enemy knew they were coming, and each time money flowed into this account. Then she saw it, the deposit that made her vision blur, made her breathing stop. $8.2 million, dated 3 days after Operation Dark Winter. 3 days after 12 of her teammates died screaming in a Syrian desert. Nora's hands were shaking now, the professional distance she'd maintained for 8 days evaporating, replaced by something hot and sharp and barely controlled. She forced herself to breathe. 4 count in, 4 count hold, 4 count out. Then she opened another file, her father's case, 20 years old. declassified after his death because they'd ruled it accidental and closed the investigation. She'd read it 1,000 times over the years, knew every word, every detail. But now she read it with new eyes. Colonel James Thorne, investigating intelligence leaks, multiple operations compromised, American lives lost. He'd been getting close to identifying the source. His final log entry handwritten in his careful script, meeting with trusted colleague A.H. to discuss evidence. Breakthrough imminent. By this time tomorrow, we'll have our traitor, A.H. Aldrich Hale. The entry was dated June 14th. The next document in the file was the accident report. June 15th, 03:47 hours, Route 234, single vehicle crash. Colonel Thorne's car left the road at high speed, went into a ravine, died on impact, cause listed as black ice. Loss of control. But Nora pulled up the weather report for that night. Temperature 48 degrees Fahrenheit. Clear skies. No precipitation, no ice. She kept reading. Found the vehicle examination report. Front brake line shows signs of wear and possible compromise. However, due to the severity of the crash and subsequent fire, definitive determination of pre-existing failure versus impact damage cannot be made. 20 years ago, they'd shrugged and called it an accident because nobody wanted to believe a decorated officer would murder one of his own. But Nora knew better now. Her father had scheduled a meeting with Aldrich Hale. He'd said they'd have their traitor by the next day. And the next day, he was dead. She pulled up a photograph. Her father in his dress uniform, taken 2 weeks before he died. Smiling, strong, alive. She'd been 22 years old when she got the call. Away at college, planning to follow in his footsteps. Join the military. Make him proud. Instead, she'd identified his body, buried him at Arlington, and spent 20 years carrying the weight of questions nobody else seemed to ask. Now she had answers. Aldrich Hale had killed her father, waited 13 years, then killed her entire team when she started asking the same questions. The rage that swept through her was like nothing she'd felt in 7 years, hot and consuming and demanding action. But she was a professional. She channeled that rage, controlled it, weaponized it. She sat in the darkness of her quarters, and for the first time since arriving at Quantico, she let herself remember, really remember. Not just the facts, not just the mission details, the people. The moment came suddenly, unexpectedly. 1 second she was looking at her father's photograph. The next second she wasn't in her quarters anymore. She was in Syria. 7 years ago, the heat hit her first. Desert heat that sucked moisture from your lungs and made your gear feel like it weighed twice what it should. 118 degrees in the shade, except there was no shade. Commander Nora Thorne, 35 years old, stood in the staging area outside the compound. Her team around her, 12 of the best operators she'd ever worked with. Sergeant Wyatt Briggs stood to her left, 42 years old, built like a tank, scarred hands checking his rifle for the 1,000th time. He'd been her mentor since she joined the SG program, taught her everything about staying alive in places where the world wanted you dead. "You good, Commander." His voice was gravel and smoke. 23 years of service. 3 of those years teaching Nora how to be more than just skilled, how to be excellent. "I'm good, Wyatt. You." "Another day in paradise," he grinned, teeth white against his tanned face. "My daughter's birthday is next week. Got her present all picked out. Just need to survive this OP and get home to give it to her." Nora smiled. "What did you get?" "Telescope. She wants to be an astronomer. Figure I can show her the stars are worth reaching for." Corporal Brenna Sullivan appeared on Nora's right, 29 years old. Sniper, red hair pulled back tight, green eyes that could spot movement at 1,500 meters. She'd saved Nora's life in Fallujah, and again in Baghdad, and again in Kandahar. "Coordinates are set," Brenna said. "Approach route looks clean. Should be a simple in and out." "Nothing's ever simple," Wyatt muttered. "That's why they pay us the big bucks," Brenna shot back. She bumped Nora's shoulder. "After this, you're buying first round. I'm thinking something with an umbrella in it. We've earned tropical drinks." Nora laughed. "Deal." The other 10 operators checked equipment, joked, the nervous energy that always came before insertion. These were people who'd trained together, fought together, bled together. They were family. The briefing had been clear. Intelligence suggested a high-value target at a compound 12 clicks from their position. Get in, gather intel, get out. No contact if possible. Clean operation. The coordinates had come through official channels, verified by command, authentication codes all correct. Everything should have been perfect. At 2200 hours, they moved out. Nora took point. Wyatt covered her 6. Brenna on overwatch. The team moved through the desert night like ghosts. Silent, efficient. 12 people operating as one organism. They reached the compound at 2347. Exactly on schedule, Nora signaled. The team spread out, taking positions, preparing for entry. That's when she felt it. Something wrong, something off. The compound was too quiet, no lights, no movement, no signs of the intelligence they'd been sent to gather. She was about to signal abort when the world exploded. The first RPG came from the east. Hit the wall 10 feet from where Corporal Davis was positioned. The explosion was deafening, blinding. Davis went down, shrapnel in his legs, screaming. Then the machine guns opened up from 3 directions, interlocking fields of fire. Perfect kill zone. They'd been expected. Someone had told the enemy exactly where they'd be, exactly when, exactly how they'd approach. Ambush! Break! Contact! Nora's voice over the radio. Training taking over. Suppressing fire and move. But there was nowhere to move. They were pinned, caught in the open. No cover except the low stone walls of the compound. Wyatt was returning fire, his rifle barking, taking down 2 enemy fighters. 3, buying time for the team to find cover. Commander, we're compromised. Someone sold us, Wyatt's voice. Calm despite the chaos. He'd been in worse situations. He'd get them out. Another RPG. This one hit the north wall. The explosion sent rock fragments flying like shrapnel. Brenna was down, headshot, dead before she hit the ground. Nora screamed her name, started toward her. Wyatt grabbed her arm. She's gone. Focus on the living. Enemy fighters advancing now. Dozens of them. They'd been waiting, prepared. This wasn't a random encounter. This was an execution. The team fought. God, they fought. Professional, disciplined. Even in a kill box, they maintained fire discipline. Covered each other, tried to create an exit. But one by one they fell. Corporal Jenkins, shot in the chest. Body armor stopped the first round. Second round hit his throat. Lieutenant Morrison, RPG. Direct hit. Nothing left to recover. Sergeant Palmer, headshot while reloading. 10 minutes into the ambush, half the team was dead. Wyatt was hit. Shoulder, bleeding bad, but still fighting, still commanding, still trying to save whoever he could. Nora, he only used her first name when things were desperate. Call for exfil. Get whoever's left out of here. She was already on it. Radio call to base. Raven 7, this is Shadow 1. We are under heavy fire. Multiple casualties. Request immediate. The mortar round landed 15 feet away. The world went white, then black, then red. Nora woke up under rubble. Couldn't move. 3 ribs broken. She could feel them grinding. Shoulder was wet. Gunshot wound? When had she been shot? She could hear Wyatt close, maybe 10 feet away, calling for her. Nora. Nora, can you hear me? She tried to answer, coughed blood instead. She could see him now, pinned like she was. Building had collapsed on both of them. His legs were crushed, but he was still alive, still conscious. I'm here, she managed. I'm here, Wyatt. His face turned toward her, pale, going into shock, but his eyes were clear. Someone sold us, Nora. This wasn't bad intelligence. This was betrayal. I know. You have to. You have to find them. His breathing was getting worse, ragged. Promise me. Find who did this. Make them pay. I promise, Wyatt. I swear to God, I promise. Tell my daughter. He coughed, blood on his lips. Tell her the stars are worth reaching for. Tell her. He died right there, 10 feet away, close enough to touch if the rubble hadn't pinned her. Nora watched him die. Watched the light leave his eyes. Watched her mentor, her friend, her brother. Gone. Around her, the gunfire was dying down. The enemy was leaving. They'd done what they came to do. 12 Americans dead, mission accomplished. Except Nora was still breathing. The pain in her ribs was excruciating. Every breath felt like knives. The bullet wound in her shoulder had stopped bleeding, probably gone into shock. Body shutting down non-essential functions to preserve life. She had 2 choices. Stay here and die, or move. She moved. It took 40 minutes to dig herself out of the rubble, 40 minutes of agony, of biting through her lip to keep from screaming, of willing her broken body to keep moving. When she finally pulled herself free, she looked around at what was left of her team. 12 bodies, some intact, some not, all dead, except her. She crawled, 2 miles to the exfil point, broken ribs grinding with every movement, shoulder bleeding again, leaving a trail in the sand. She crawled past Brenna's body, stopped, took her dog tags, her sniper patch, crawled past Wyatt, took his dog tags, the photo of his daughter he kept in his pocket, crawled past all of them, took something from each, so they'd come home with her even if their bodies didn't. 2 miles. It took 3 hours. When the extraction team found her, she was still conscious, still crawling, still moving forward. Because that's what Wyatt had taught her. You keep moving until you can't, and then you move some more. The medic tried to sedate her. She fought him. Betrayal, she kept saying. Someone betrayed us. Someone sold us. Find them. Promise me you'll find them. They thought she was delirious, traumatized, in shock. They didn't understand. She wasn't delirious. She was making a vow. Present day, Nora's quarters at Quantico. She came back to herself slowly, cheeks wet, tears she didn't remember crying. In her hands, she held Wyatt's dog tags, Brenna's patch. She'd carried them for 7 years, never let them go. I found him, Wyatt, she whispered to the empty room. The man who gave the order, the man who sold you, all of you. She looked at the photo of her father on her desk. I found him, Dad, the same man who killed you. Tomorrow she would move against Aldrich Hale. Tomorrow the hunt ended. But tonight she let herself grieve. For her father, for her team, for all the ghosts that had followed her for 7 years. Tomorrow was for justice. Tonight was for remembering. Her phone buzzed. Message from Wade. Ready when you are, Commander. Nora wiped her eyes, stood, put the dog tags back around her neck, under her shirt, against her heart. Tomorrow, she texted back. We finish this. She made 3 more encrypted calls that night, setting pieces in motion, activating protocols, calling in debts from people who owed her their lives. By 0400 hours, everything was in place. Master Gunnery Sergeant Brennan's family would be extracted at 0800, moved to a safe location, protected. The 3 generals she trusted would receive notification at 0900, telling them to be at Quantico by 1300 hours the next day, and Lieutenant Wade would have his recording equipment ready, set to broadcast to multiple secure locations simultaneously, insurance against anyone trying to bury the truth. Tomorrow, day 9, would be the endgame. Aldrich Hale had been running for 20 years. Tomorrow he stopped. Nora lay down on her bed, didn't sleep, just stared at the ceiling, thinking about everyone who'd brought her to this moment. Her father who'd died seeking truth, Wyatt who'd taught her to never give up, Brenna who'd always had her back, 10 others whose names she whispered in the darkness. Tomorrow, she promised them all. Tomorrow, justice comes. At 0600 hours, her alarm went off. Day 9 had begun, the day she'd been preparing for since she was 22 years old. The day Aldrich Hale would finally answer for his crimes. Nora stood, got dressed, put on her civilian contractor clothes one last time. But in her pocket, she carried her real ID, the black card that said who she really was. By tonight, everyone would know. The mask was about to come off. And God help anyone who stood in her way. 0300 hours, Building 52, the same abandoned training facility where this alliance had begun. Lieutenant Wade arrived first this time, waited in the darkness, listening to the night sounds of the base, distant generators humming, the occasional vehicle passing on perimeter roads. Nora came through the back entrance. She moved differently now, no longer the careful civilian contractor trying to blend in. This was full operator mode, silent footsteps, perfect spatial awareness, a predator in her element. She didn't waste time with greetings. I know who Ghostline is. Wade straightened. Who? General Aldrich Hale. He killed my father 20 years ago, killed my team 7 years ago, and he's planning to kill more operators at Fort Bragg in 3 weeks. She showed him everything, the offshore accounts, the financial trail, the correlation between deposits and compromise operations, her father's final log entry, the meeting with AH the night before he died. Wade absorbed it all, his face growing harder with each piece of evidence. Jesus Christ, a general, a flag officer. Not just any general. Deputy Director of Intelligence. He's been running Ghostline for at least 20 years, maybe longer. What do we do? Nora pulled out another tablet, showed him a different file. Tomorrow morning I'm going to request a meeting with Master Gunnery Sergeant Brennan. Official evaluation. Just the 2 of us. He won't talk to you willingly. He will when I show him what I have. Brennan's been Hale's pawn for 18 years. Blackmailed, controlled, his family threatened. She looked at Wade. But he's not evil. He's trapped. And I'm going to offer him a way out. in exchange for testimony. In exchange for the truth, everything, names, protocols, how Hale runs his network, how he stays hidden. Nora's voice was steel. Brennan is my key to unlocking this entire operation. Wade nodded, understanding the plan, then he asked the harder question. And Hale, when he realizes Brennan is talking, that's where you come in. I need you to document everything. Record it, create a backup that can't be erased or classified into oblivion. She pulled out a small device. This is an encrypted recorder, military grade, stores data in distributed nodes. Even if they destroy the physical device, the data survives. She handed it to him. Tomorrow when I meet with Brennan, you record everything. Then you send copies to 3 people. She gave him a list. General Marcus Donovan, General Victoria Harlan, General Pierce Lawson. They're the only flag officers I trust absolutely. You're preparing for war. I'm preparing for justice. There's a difference. Morning came cold and gray. Day 8 of Nora's time at Quantico. She submitted a formal request through proper channels. Routine evaluation for senior NCOs. Master Gunnery Sergeant Garrett Brennan. 0900 hours. The request was approved. No questions asked. At 08:55, Brennan arrived at Building 1133. He walked with the confident swagger of a man who'd spent 8 days making a civilian woman's life miserable, who'd orchestrated her isolation, who'd watched his Marines block her from tables and cancel her appointments. He knocked on her office door. Come in. He entered, saw Nora sitting behind her desk, professional, calm, dressed in her civilian contractor clothes. Not a threat, just a therapist doing her job. Master Guns, thank you for coming. Please have a seat. Brennan sat, but he didn't relax, kept his posture rigid, defensive. Let's make this quick, ma'am. I've got a company to run. Of course, I just have a few questions about stress management, deployment cycles, standard evaluation. She asked routine questions for 5 minutes. He gave routine answers, both of them playing their roles. Then Nora shifted. Master Guns, do you remember Operation Dark Winter? Brennan's entire body went rigid, his eyes narrowed. That's classified, ma'am. You were the communications specialist. Every message that went in or out of that operation passed through your equipment. I don't know what you're talking about. Nora pulled out a tablet, turned it to face him, showed him the communication logs, 3 transmissions, sent from your station to an unlisted node, 48 hours before the operation commenced. Brennan stared at the screen, the color draining from his face. Those coordinates were sent to the enemy Master Guns. 12 people died because someone used your equipment to betray them. He stood abruptly, chair scraping against the floor. This conversation is over. Sit down, Sergeant. Something in Nora's voice made him freeze. It wasn't the voice of a civilian contractor. It was command voice, the voice of someone who'd led troops in combat and expected to be obeyed. Brennan sat slowly. Nora stood, walked around the desk, perched on the edge, looking down at him. I know you didn't do this willingly. I know someone gave you orders. Someone with the authority to make you believe those orders were legitimate. Brennan's jaw clenched. His hands gripped the armrests of his chair. I know they threatened your family, your sister, your nephew. I know you've been trapped for 18 years doing things that make you sick, serving someone who owns you. His eyes were wet now. This hard man. This warrior with 3 combat deployments in 18 years of service. Breaking. You don't understand, he whispered. If I talk, they die. Everyone I care about dies. Nora pulled up her sleeve, showed him her tattoo, the eagle globe and anchor with wings, the designation SG-12, the serial number. Brennan's eyes went wide. Commander Nora Thorne, Joint Special Reconnaissance Group, Red Omega Clearance. She leaned closer. I was one of the 12 people you helped kill 7 years ago. I survived. And I've spent every day since hunting the person who gave you those orders. Brennan looked like he might vomit. I'm sorry, God, I'm so sorry. I didn't know what those messages contained. I just followed the authentication codes. They were valid. They came from command authority. What were the codes? I can't. He'll kill my family. Master Guns, look at me. Nora's voice softened slightly. I have the resources to protect your family. Witness protection, new identities, security that doesn't exist in normal military channels. But I need you to help me. Why should I trust you? Because I'm offering you something you haven't had in 18 years. A way out, a chance to serve honorably again, A chance to stop being his pawn. Brennan was shaking now. Years of pressure, years of fear, all of it coming out. The authentication code was AH-7-Delta-Omega. Nora pulled up a database on her tablet, ran the code. Authentication code AH-7-Delta-Omega, assigned to General Aldrich Hale, Deputy Director of Intelligence. She turned the screen to show Brennan. He stared at it. Then he broke, tears streaming down his face. This combat veteran, this decorated NCO sobbing. He killed them. I helped him kill them. Oh God. Oh God. Nora gave him a moment, let him process, then she spoke quietly. Master Guns, you have one chance to make this right. There's going to be a tribunal, official investigation. I need you to testify. Tell them everything, every order, every transmission, every threat. He'll kill me. He'll try, but I won't let him succeed. Brennan looked at her. This woman he'd shoved to the ground 8 days ago. This woman he'd tried to drive off the base. This woman who was offering him redemption. What do I have to do? In a vehicle parked 3 buildings away, Lieutenant Wade sat with headphones on, listening to every word through the encrypted recorder Nora had planted in her office. He was recording everything, creating the backup that would survive even if Hale tried to bury it. When Brennan agreed to testify, Wade sent the recordings to 3 email addresses. 3 generals Nora trusted. With a simple message, watch the attached, be ready to move. Time sensitive. Then he sent a text to Nora's encrypted phone. Done, the cavalry knows. Day 8, afternoon, 1400 hours. An official summons arrived at Nora's office. Delivered by courier, formal language, legal terminology. Dr. Nora Thorne was required to appear before a full investigative tribunal. Tomorrow, day 9, 1300 hours, building 2009. Courtroom 3, charge of security violations, unauthorized access to classified materials. Conduct unbecoming a Department of Defense contractor. It was the endgame Nora had been expecting. Hale was forcing the issue, trying to get her removed from the base before she could expose him. If the tribunal found her guilty, she'd be escorted off Quantico within hours. Her investigation would end. Her evidence would be buried, unless she revealed who she really was, which was exactly what Hale wanted. Force her hand, make her expose herself. Then he could claim she was operating outside proper authority, that her evidence was fruit of an illegal investigation. It was a clever trap, but Nora had been preparing for this moment for 7 years. She made 3 encrypted phone calls. The first was to General Marcus Donovan, 4-star, Pacific Command, a man who'd served with her father 30 years ago. Marcus, it's Nora. I need you at Quantico tomorrow, 1300 hours, courtroom 3 building 2009. What's happening? Justice, finally, but I need you there to witness it. I'll be there. The second call was to General Victoria Harlan, 3-star, Intelligence Division, a woman who'd lost her own team to a ghost line leak 6 years ago. Victoria, tomorrow, Quantico, I'm taking down Aldrich Hale. Silence on the other end. Then, are you certain? I have Brennan. I have the financial records. I have everything. I'll bring Pierce Lawson. You'll need Joint Chiefs representation. Thank you. The third call was to a number that didn't officially exist. An office with no name. A person with no rank. It's Thorne. Activate Osprey Protocol. Family protection. Immediate extraction. Target. Sister and nephew of Master Gunnery Sergeant Garrett Brennan. Current location Richmond, Virginia. They need to disappear for 72 hours. Understood. They'll be gone within the hour. Nora hung up. Looked at the summons on her desk. Tomorrow she would walk into that courtroom. Tomorrow she would face the man who killed her father and her team. Tomorrow the mask would come off. But tonight she had one more thing to do. She opened the locked case she'd carried with her from the beginning. Inside was the photograph. 12 faces, 12 warriors who'd trusted her to bring them home. Sergeant Wyatt Briggs, mentor, the man who'd taught her everything about being an operator. Corporal Brenna Sullivan, best friend, sister in all but blood. 10 others, names she whispered every night before she slept. Tomorrow, she told them. Tomorrow he answers for what he did to you, I promise. Day 9, 12:45, building 2009. Nora walked across the compound in her civilian clothes. Navy blouse, gray slacks, contractor badge, but in her pocket was her real identification. The black card with gold lettering, Commander, SG-12, Red Omega. The weight of it felt like absolution. Lieutenant Wade walked beside her. He'd insisted on coming, on being there as witness. You ready for this, ma'am? I've been ready for 7 years. They reached the building, climbed the stairs to the third floor, found courtroom 3. Outside the door, Master Gunnery Sergeant Brennan waited. He looked terrible, pale, exhausted, like a man who hadn't slept in days. Because he hadn't. Because he'd spent the night calling his sister, saying goodbye without saying why, telling his nephew he loved him, preparing for the possibility that this testimony would cost him everything. Master Guns. Commander. He straightened. My family. Safe, extracted 3 hours ago, new location. Protected. Relief flooded his face. Then determination replaced it. Then let's finish this. They entered together. The courtroom was larger than Nora expected. Elevated platform where the panel would sit. Tables for prosecution and defense. Rows of benches for spectators. 52 people filled those benches. Marines, officers. Curious personnel who'd heard something big was happening. The panel was already seated. Colonel Judith Ashford presiding. Gray hair, sharp eyes. 30 years of service. Major Ethan Cross to her right. The intelligence officer who'd questioned Nora days ago. Captain Reeves to her left. JAG Corps, legal specialist, and in the front row, sitting alone. Confident smile on his face. General Aldrich Hale. He looked at Nora and nodded, like they were old friends, like he wasn't the man who'd murdered her father and tried to murder her. Nora met his eyes, let him see nothing. No fear, no anger, just patience. In the back rows, 3 figures slipped in quietly. General Marcus Donovan, General Victoria Harlan, General Pierce Lawson. They took seats in the rear, unobtrusive, waiting. Colonel Ashford called the tribunal to order. 1300 hours exactly. This investigative tribunal is convened to examine charges against Dr. Nora Thorne, civilian contractor, Department of Defense. Dr. Thorne, you are charged with security violations, unauthorized access to classified materials, and conduct unbecoming a DoD contractor. How do you plead? Nora stood, voice clear and steady. Not guilty, Colonel. Very well. Major Cross, you may present the prosecution's evidence. Cross stood. Spent 25 minutes laying out the case. Witness statements from Marines who'd seen Nora asking suspicious questions. Access logs showing attempts to reach classified systems. The contraband incident, a pattern of behavior that suggested espionage or unauthorized intelligence gathering. It was thorough, professional, damning. When he finished, Ashford turned to Nora. Dr. Thorne, you may present your defense. Nora stood, walked to the center of the room, looked at the panel, at the spectators, at Hale sitting there with his satisfied smile. Colonel Ashford, before I begin, I have a procedural question. Go ahead. Are all relevant parties present in this room? All decision makers, all authority figures who need to hear what I'm about to say. Ashford frowned, confused by the question. The convening authority and panel members are present. Why do you ask? Because what I'm about to reveal needs to be witnessed by everyone. For the record, for history. For justice, the room went quiet. Sensing something shifting, Nora turned to face Hale directly. I've been called a spion, an infiltrator, a security risk. She began unbuttoning her collar. The truth is, you're absolutely right. I am not who I claim to be. She pulled up her left sleeve, revealed the tattoo, the eagle globe and anchor with wings, the JSRG designation, the SG-12 marking. The room erupted in gasps. And at that exact moment, the doors at the back of the courtroom burst open. 4 figures entered. 4 generals in dress uniform, stars gleaming on their shoulders. The entire room scrambled to attention. 52 people leaping to their feet, hands snapping to salute. General Marcus Donovan, 4-star. Pacific Command, General Victoria Harlan, 3-star. Intelligence Division, General Pierce Lawson, 4-star. Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Thomas Reeves, 3-star. Special Operations Command. They marched down the center aisle in perfect formation, boots striking the floor in unified rhythm, reached the front of the courtroom, turned 90 degrees, faced Nora, and in perfect unison they saluted. Not the panel, not Colonel Ashford, not the convening authority. They saluted Nora Thorne first. The room held its breath. Absolute silence. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Nora returned the salute with crisp precision. At ease, generals. They lowered their salutes, but remained at attention. General Donovan stepped forward, his voice carried across the stunned courtroom. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce Commander Nora James Thorne, Senior Grade 12, Joint Special Reconnaissance Group. She holds Red Omega clearance, the highest classification level in United States military and intelligence apparatus. He paused. Let that sink in. When operating under that clearance, every person in this room, including myself, answers to her authority. Colonel Ashford looked like she'd been struck by lightning. Major Cross's mouth hung open. The 52 spectators were frozen in shock. Master Gunnery Sergeant Brennan's face had gone from pale to gray, and General Aldrich Hale's confident smile had vanished, replaced by something colder, harder, the mask finally slipping. Nora turned to address the tribunal. The accusations against me were manufactured by someone in this room who needed me removed before I could expose 20 years of treason. She looked at Brennan, someone who's been using good Marines like Master Gunnery Sergeant Brennan as unwitting pawns, blackmailing them, threatening their families, forcing them to serve an agenda that has nothing to do with protecting this country. Brennan stood, his voice shaking. Commander Thorne is telling the truth. I was blackmailed for 18 years. My family was threatened. I followed orders I thought came from legitimate command authority. I relayed communications that I didn't know would lead to the deaths of American operators. The room erupted in whispers. Ashford banged her gavel. Order, Master Guns, are you confessing to crimes? I'm confessing to being manipulated, Colonel. And I'm here to testify about who gave me those orders. Nora pulled out her tablet. Displayed it on the courtroom's projection screen. Operation Dark Winter. Communication logs. 3 transmissions to an unlisted node. 7 years ago, 12 special operators were ambushed in Syria. The enemy knew exactly where they'd be, exactly when, exactly how they'd approach. She showed the next slide. Authentication codes. These transmissions were sent from Master Guns Brennan's station, using authentication code AH-7-Delta-Omega. She pulled up the database entry. That code belongs to General Aldrich Hale. Every eye in the room turned to Hale. He stood slowly, his face calm, too calm. This is an outrageous accusation based on circumstantial evidence and the testimony of a confessed criminal. Nora showed the next slide. Financial records. Offshore account. Cayman Islands. $73 million. Registered to a trust fund for your son. Deposits correlating with 14 compromised operations over 12 years. She zoomed in on one entry. $8.2 million. Deposited 3 days after Operation Dark Winter, the operation where 12 of my teammates died. Hale's jaw clenched. Nora showed another document. 20 years ago, my father, Colonel James Thorne, was investigating an intelligence leak. His final log entry mentions a meeting with a trusted colleague, initials AH. She showed the accident report. The next day, he died in a single vehicle crash. Ruled accidental. But the brake line examination showed possible tampering. The weather report showed no ice despite the official cause being listed as black ice. Her voice hardened. General Aldrich Hale, you murdered my father in 2004 when he got too close to exposing you. You murdered my team in 2017 when I followed the same trail. And you were planning to murder more operators in 3 weeks at Fort Bragg. The courtroom was absolute chaos now. Ashford banging her gavel, people shouting, MPS moving toward Hale. Hale raised his hands, but he was smiling now. A different smile, cold, calculating. You're right about all of it, Commander Thorne, every single detail. The room went silent again, shocked by his admission. Your father was brilliant, one piece of evidence away from exposing me. So I killed him, made it look accidental. He looked at Nora with empty eyes. I watched you cry at his funeral. You were 18. So much grief. Nora was trembling, fists clenched. Lieutenant Wade put a hand on her arm, steadying her. Hale continued, his voice conversational, like discussing the weather. 13 years later, you start asking the same questions, getting too close. So I sent your team into a kill box, watched 12 operators die via satellite feed. He shrugged. You surviving was unfortunate, but it gave me 7 years to prepare for this moment. He reached into his jacket. MPS moved, but Hale was faster. He pulled out a small device, black, about the size of a phone, with a red button under a protective cover. This courtroom is wired. 4 pounds of C4 in the walls, ceiling, floor, my insurance policy for years. Every person in the room froze. Hale flipped up the protective cover. His thumb hovered over the button. In 15 seconds, there will be a tragic structural failure. Gas explosion. 4 generals dead, 1 troublesome operative dead. Investigation will be inconclusive. General Donovan took a step forward. Aldrich, for God's sake, there are 50 people in this room. Collateral damage, Marcus. The network I serve doesn't count bodies, only results. He started backing toward the door. Thumb on the trigger. Ghost line is bigger than any of you understand. I'm just one operator, one node. Taking me down changes nothing. Nora's voice cut through the panic. General Harlan, emergency ventilation panel behind you. On my mark. Harlan tensed. Ready. Hale smiled. It won't matter. This whole building is wired. Even if you run, you won't make it out in time. Now, Harlan kicked the vent panel. It crashed inward. Emergency exit. Nora threw her tablet at Hale's face. Hard. Fast. He flinched. Pressed the button. Click. Nothing. He pressed again. Click. Nothing. Confusion. Then rage. Nora's voice was ice. I found your C4 at 0330 this morning. Disabled the detonators at 0347. EOD removed 4 pounds of Semtex H at 0515. She pulled out her phone, showed him time-stamped photos. Bomb disposal team, explosives being carefully extracted from walls. Batch number traces to your Syria deployment 2015. Sloppy General. Hale's face twisted. Pure fury. He dropped the detonator, reached for his sidearm. Nora was already moving. She crossed the distance in 3 strides, grabbed his wrist as the Beretta cleared the holster. Twisted. Applied pressure to the ulnar nerve. The pistol clattered to the floor. Hale threw an elbow at her face. She ducked, drove her shoulder into his solar plexus. Both slammed into the wall. He was bigger, 6'2", 220, decades of staying in fighting shape. But Nora had been training for this moment for 7 years. He threw a punch. She deflected, countered with a palm strike to his chin. His head snapped back. He grabbed her, tried to use his weight advantage. They grappled, crashed into chairs. The MPs were moving now, but Donovan raised a hand. Let her finish it. Nora hooked Hale's ankle, full body weight into the sweep. Both went down. She transitioned instantly, mounted position, grabbed his arm, wrenched it behind his back, knee on his spine, full control, breathing hard, but voice steady. Aldrich Hale, you are under arrest for treason, espionage, murder of federal officers, conspiracy, attempted mass murder. 8 MPS swarmed, pulled Hale to his feet, cuffed him. He was still talking, still threatening. You haven't won, Nora. They're coming for you. The network knows. You're a dead woman walking. Nora walked up to him, close enough to whisper, let them come. I've been waiting. The MPS dragged him out, his voice echoing down the hallway until a door slammed shut. Silence filled the courtroom. 72 hours later, the aftermath, Hale was in military custody, awaiting court-martial. His lawyers were already arguing about jurisdiction and classification levels. But the evidence was overwhelming. Financial records, testimony from Brennan and 6 other operators who'd been blackmailed into serving Ghost Line, communication logs, everything Nora had gathered over 7 years. 13 other members of the network were arrested, officers, contractors, even 2 congressmen who'd been taking payments. The cleanup would take months, maybe years. But it had started. Master Gunnery Sergeant Brennan sat in Nora's office, now an official SG-12 command space. Commander, I don't deserve your time. I helped kill 12 people. You were blackmailed, coerced. That doesn't erase responsibility, but it explains it. I want to make this right. I'll testify against everyone, names, dates, protocols, everything I know. I need more than testimony, Master Guns. I need you operational. He looked up, surprised. Ghost Line Phase 2, Fort Bragg. 18 days from now. Your communications expertise is critical to stopping it. You're giving me a mission. I'm giving you a chance to serve honorably. Whether you take it is your choice. Brennan stood, extended his hand. I won't let you down, Commander. Lieutenant Wade was next, called to her office. You asked to be part of this fight, Lieutenant. Yes, ma'am. I'm sponsoring you for SG pipeline training, 6 weeks, then deep cover operations, silent service, no credit, no recognition. Wade didn't hesitate. I accept. Your father would be proud, Captain Robert Wade. He served in Operation Sentinel, same investigation that killed my father. Wade's eyes widened. He hadn't known. This isn't just my mission, Lieutenant. It's ours. It's everyone who's ever been betrayed by people they trusted to protect them. That afternoon, there was a ceremony. Quantico, the parade ground, 500 Marines in formation. A new memorial wall was unveiled. Black granite, polished to mirror shine. The inscription read, Operation Dark Winter, in memory of those who fell, then 12 names. Sergeant Wyatt Briggs Corporal, Brenna Sullivan, 10 others, silent professionals, never forgotten. Nora stood before the wall in her dress uniform, the first time she'd worn it publicly in 7 years. She touched Wyatt's name, Brenna's name. "Mission accomplished," she whispered. "You can rest now." Young Marines stood honor guard, rifles at present arms. Colonel Ashford stepped forward. "By order of the Commandant, we hereby establish the Thorn Protocol, enhanced vetting for all personnel with access to operational intelligence, named in honor of Colonel James Thorn and Commander Nora Thorn, both of whom gave everything to protect the integrity of this institution." The formation saluted. Nora returned it. Justice. Finally. That evening, Nora packed her vehicle. Mission at Quantico complete. But the war continued. Fort Bragg, North Carolina. 16 days. Phase 2. 3 assets: Serpent, Oracle, Bishop. She opened her laptop, reviewed the intelligence. An encrypted message arrived. Serpent identified. Colonel rank, deep cover, dangerous. Nora typed a reply. "Prepare cover identity, logistics auditor, arriving 0600 tomorrow." Lieutenant Wade called. "Commander, I've already built your credentials. You're good to go." "Thank you, Wade. See you at Bragg in 72 hours. She closed the laptop, started the engine, looked back at Quantico one last time. 20 years ago, her father died hunting traitors. 7 years ago, her team died because she got too close to the truth. Today, that truth had brought justice. But Aldrich Hale was right about one thing. Ghostline was bigger than one man, bigger than one base. It was a network, a hydra. Cut off one head, 2 more grew, which meant Nora's work wasn't done. It would never be done. As long as there were people willing to sell American lives for profit, there would be operators like her, hunting in shadows, living in silence, fighting wars the world would never know about, until every traitor faced the light. She drove toward the gate, toward the next mission. Commander Nora Thorn, SG-12, Red Omega, silent professional, and the hunt continued.